The time to build is upon us.
With great power comes great responsibility.
You know the greatest danger facing us is ourselves.
Irrational fear, we all know.
Not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
This is the Superhuman Academy podcast.
Hey, Gina. So I wanted to just jump right in so last time we talked, you shared a little bit of your story with me, and you've had a wild ride of life. And so I want to hear more about that. And in particular, you shared with me that you are a death doula.
That's correct.
And so I'd like to jump into that as well. So I'm just kind of pre-framing that, but I'd love for you to just kind of share a little bit about your story first, then we can take it from there.
That sounds good, Collin, and I appreciate you having me, and blessings upon you and all our listeners here. And yeah, my story, it was a journey. It was a journey that I never expected, a journey where I never thought I'd be here today. But yet, it's a great journey, and it's truly God's grace that got me here. Got me here. I was raised in New York. I'm one of 8 kids on Long Island, and beautiful family. There's no complaints, but yet I was the 7th child, and I was born with a lot of physical problems. I didn't like myself as a child because I compared myself to my siblings who were, to me, in my eyes, and still are athletic, beautiful, and then here I was this little the shortest one of the family. I was, kid, students would or kids, friends would make fun of me. I guess you would call it bullying, but I never, that word was not even in the vocabulary.
Yeah.
And, and I just felt very low with myself. But as I continued in my life, I was searching for that love, like we all are, that acceptance. And I was looking in all the wrong places. I come to find out, and it was places where just left me in a real dark place, in a real dark hole. And that was like throughout my childhood, middle school, even in college. In college, yes, I was involved in the college scene of the alcohol and the drugs and the unhealthy relationships, but I thought that was it. But it seemed like that I was the only one that was drinking. I was the only one that's searching because it seemed like everybody studied and, yeah, yes, they partied, but they studied, which I didn't know what studying was at the time. So, but after graduating from college, my parents had moved, retired, because my parents had my younger brother when my mother was 49 and my dad was 46. So,
Wow.
yeah, that was my youngest brother, and, he was the, golden child. I mean, we all were, but, I mean, my parents loved us unconditionally, but they kept him young, but yet at the time of their retirement age, they moved to Pennsylvania halfway, so Stephen could continue to be in high school, and so after college, my mom, being this Italian sweet lady, says, "Oh, why don't you come home and live with us?" And and I did. I had really nowhere to go. I was living, like I said, that college scene, so I go home, live with my parents. I have to get a job. I got a social work degree, so I bartended. That was my life, bartending, and I'm like,
Yeah.
this is it. This is social work. Yes, you listen to the problems.
Yeah. Yeah. No kidding.
Yeah, and you take their money and you say goodbye.
Mhm.
Goodbye. And also, I was still in that college scene of alcohol, of being the center of the attention, searching for that love, and, I mean, I was 23 years old, and you would think by now you would love yourself, but I really was soul searching, which I
Mm.
didn't realize. And then, during that time, it's coming up about 33 years ago, my mom was diagnosed with cancer, and I happened to be home with my dad. And, of course, I prayed. Of course, we took the rosaries out. My parents were very, devout Catholics. At
Mm.
this point, I stopped going to church. Not that I believe in God, I didn't need him. I really
Mhm.
didn't need him, but, of course, when you get that diagnosis that your mom's terminally ill, 4 to 6 months to live, you're like, And when you're not in a state of mind to, what does that mean? What does that
Yeah.
mean? So that was the time where it was my first experience of death because she had died 5 months later. So
Mhm.
that was my experience of watching someone die and dying in front of myself as well as other siblings and my dad. And so when she had died, I literally died. I literally died. I did not want to live. I was like, "Where's my mom? What's going on here? What's
Mhm.
life?" So I went to go search about life. What is life? I mean, where what is the meaning of life? Um, Everyone at my mom's wake and funeral would say that your mom's in heaven, is with God. Well, she's not with me. Who is this God person? That was my
Right.
mentality.
Mhm.
So once again, I did some more searching. I went back to my Catholic roots, and I did. I was like, "Oh, this is heaven. This is where God is. This is where my mom is." I remember when I went back into the church, I said to God in the church loudly because nobody was there, and I said, God, everyone tells me you're here, but I don't want to talk to you. I want to talk to my mom.
Yeah.
Talk to my mom." And so that was a good year, really, just trying to find where my mom's at and talking to my mom. And now I'm on this other journey, which I didn't expect. And as I'm talking to mom, and my Italian relatives are very involved in the church, and all I did was cry, cry, cry. Tears were my best friend. I mean, if I had met you back then, Colin, I would have told you, oh, the whole story without even knowing if met you on the train. That's how I was, like telling
Yeah.
everybody my
Yeah.
story. Look at me, poor me. I don't have a husband. I don't have this, I have that. I'm bartending. My mom's dead, and, but then yet, like I said, when I was going on that spiritual journey about heaven or a place better than this, I came back to my Catholic roots. And
Mhm.
I was like, so I went from one extreme, one would say living a Sodom and Gomorrah, like,
Mhm.
yeah. And then on the other extreme, that everybody's going to hell, like a resurrection
Yeah.
or a
Sure.
Christian resurrection.
Yeah, and I
And
remember in our first conversation, you mentioned you went so far as to join, I think, what do we call a nunnery? I'm not really familiar with the terminology, so you have to help me out there.
That's correct. That's
Okay.
correct because that's my next, as my journey continues, I get this aha moment
Yeah.
of God. And yes, I joined the convent. I
Right,
became a
convent.
nun.
Okay.
A Franciscan nun. It's in the South Bronx. I took the vows of poverty, chastity, obedience, wore full habit. My community was very traditional. We followed the footsteps of Saint Francis that everybody heard. Live a life of, I mean, real poverty, where slept on the floor, didn't have anything,
Mhm.
no couch, no cell phones, anything
Yeah.
like that. Um, and of course, lived under obedience. I was submitted to my superior. So, and I did that for 12 years. And I was in the heart of the South Bronx, in the poor. We lived with the
Mhm.
poor. I mean, our convent was in the poor area of, yeah, where there was violence, gangs. It was just
Can you share what a day in that life is like? Because that, I think it's so f especially, being a nun, I think that's so far removed from most people's day-to-day experience, and I'm really curious what that was like.
yes, it's a vocation. It's a super, what do you would call supernatural. It's a grace from God. And I felt called because there's so many religious orders out there that follow different saints, follow different
Yeah.
traditions. And but with Franciscans, Saint Francis, we chose to live with the poor. So when I joined, our daily would be prayer. We would pray like 5 times a day. We would, in the morning, and it's also there are stages as becoming a nun. You start off as like a postulant, where you're part of the community and you kinda see what their life is all about. And we as
Mhm.
Franciscans, we worked with the poor. We worked and served with the poor. So we worked with the homeless, the youth, the young people. We would go into these apartment buildings that were run down. We would help them out, not only material things and maybe physical things, but also spiritual. We were trying to be that beacon of light, the beacon of life.
Mhm.
So that was our daily, our daily routine. We'd wake up in the morning, pray at least 2 hours in the morning,
Wow.
get our, um, regain, get our contact with God, and then from there in the early stages, you may have to have classes, take different kind of classes, not classes to go to a school, but classes within your convent or within
Mhm.
your order. Whether you learn about Francis or the
Mhm.
catechism, like different things. And then, like I said, we work with the poor, so we might do apostolical work, which means hands-on reaching out, maybe we going to visit someone in the hospital, and then
Mhm.
we always we prayed like 5 times a day. We would always, like, break it up, and we'd come back to the chapel as a communion of sisters and pray, thanking God, then go out again, and then come back and pray,
Wow.
and, we would do, like, what they would say, like, a holy hour. We'd spend, like, an hour in the chapel at evening, have dinner, come back, pray the rosary, pray, and then it'd be silence. It would be silence until the next morning. So, and like I said, we lived a very simple, austere life.
Mhm.
Um, we didn't have anything. We wore a full habit. So, because there are many religious communities that are maybe more towards traditional, towards liberal, whatever it may be.
Sure.
Some will wear a full habit. So, the order was in, full habit from head to toe.
Mhm.
And of course a rosary, and like a dedication to our Blessed Mother. Um, so that was our daily routine. And then as I said, posthumously you come and you taste the order. This sounds good. So we could become a novice. And now when you become a novice, it's a 2-year novitiate, they call it, and you cut your hair off. You
Oh,
put the
wow.
veil
Okay.
on. It's like a private ceremony because as women, what's our glory, our vein is our hair, like the
Mm.
beauty of our
Okay.
hair. So it's like, okay, I'm taking the beauty of my hair, the beauty of myself, and I'm just giving it to God alone. Because ultimately, a vocation in religious life is you marry God. It's one on one, heart to heart. You give up everything just for God
And
alone.
did you when you were there, did you experience, did it feel like a close connection? Did you feel peace? Did you feel yeah.
I, I did. I believe I did. I did. There was a time being as a sister that was like, wow, this is it. This is where I found my
Mm.
peace. This is mostly in the chapel. When I'm in the
Yeah.
chapel, it's like, wow. I was known as a sister that prayed a lot because all I did was just pray, pray, intercede for people, pray, pray.
Mhm.
Uh, but then yet I didn't realize it back then, which I see now is that we're all human. There's imperfections. We fall short. And so my community at that time, and this is going back in the 2000, in my eyes, it wasn't a healthy community. It was
Okay.
more a dysfunctional.
In
Uh,
what way?
well, because as I was like giving my life to God and loving God, the community has a structure
Mhm.
of, what to do, what not to do. And for some reason, my personality was crashing. Wasn't connecting. It
Mhm.
wasn't connecting. Wasn't I don't know what the word to say it, but it was just. All I know is that there was a time in my life as a community that I suffered a lot. That the community. I just went through a lot of pain, a lot of suffering, a lot of rejection. It was just like, why is this happening to me? The last 2 years of my community. Now, mind you, I don't mind talking about it, but I did
Mhm.
write my story, my book, and it's
Yeah.
all in it of what my experience is that I was just not fitting into their mold, and
Right.
I was going against it.
Can you
Uh,
share the name of your book so people can find it?
yes, it's called "Shake the Dust Off Your Feet and Walk." It's available on Amazon. So
Okay.
it's my memoir, and it talks about the pain and the suffering, as well as the good things that happen as a nun, as a sister, in my story, in my journey, in my uh it was something I had to go through for where I am today.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, I don't know where that community is today. I don't talk to the community at all. And I just say God bless them. But by the time I left the community, I was literally kicked out.
Mhm.
I felt I came to the terms back then that I was emotionally abused, I felt. Um, I just felt that, it was unfair. I had all these rejection, pain. So and it became another
Was it
grief, another loss.
was it like did they say, like, there are certain things that you're doing that you can't be doing? Or I'm trying to get a sense of what it was.
Yes, it was. It was in a sense that, because in the last 2 years of my to make a real long story short, but the last
Yeah.
2 years
Yeah.
of my being in the religious life, they came up to me and they said, "We need a break from you. You need to go
Interesting.
away." That's exactly what they said.
Wow.
And now, mind you, Colin, I was a very popular love nun. I have a
Okay.
personality plus. Yeah,
Okay.
I was a caring person, hands-on, "Let's do this, let's." I mean, I helped gang members out, was not afraid, and this was, I have to say, seeds were planted in my heart of being with the dying, of
Mhm.
visiting the dying, being at their moment, going to funerals, going to wakes, everybody loved Sister Regina. I was
And
on TV.
do you think that was the problem? Was that you were too, I don't know what that would be called, too popular?
I think so, but of course, nobody,
No one
you
knows.
don't
Yeah.
know,
Sure.
uh, I mean, I believed what I've come to find out, and as you probably have heard, whether women like to there's a lot of jealousy,
Sure.
right? I mean, personalities, they could clash. And that's what I believe, and I believe that this community, yes, I was very fit for the community. They loved me, people loved me, but the sisters did not, I
Mm.
felt. I mean, they may have a different story, they have a different thing, but what took place was that, like I said, when they said to me, "You need a break from me," and I'm like, "What?" Here I'm in my about 10 years, gave 'em blood, sweat, and tears, and I said, "Okay," because as any married couple, right, they wanna do everything they can. If they're having a problem with each other, they do everything they can to work things out.
Yeah.
Uh, so that's what I did. I was sent away. I went to a what they would call, like, a rehab for 4 4 months for
Oh, wow.
religious order. I it was a 3 I should say it was a 3-month program. And it's just it's a group, it's a place where religious priests would go if they're having struggle with their vocation, with their community, and
Okay.
just to go and get intense counseling and to see if you're fit for your vocation or you're fit for this community.
Okay, and
And
what happened there?
well, I went there. I went there. I ended up, staying 4 months. Um The what when I but by the time I went there, Colin, like I said, they it was 6 months prior when they said, "We need a break from you," and they like, "Oh, what do we do with Sister Regina?" So I was sorta, like, living elsewhere, like, I wasn't allowed back in the convent. And I was just, like, going from one place to another, just I was in tears at this time. "Why is this happening to me? I'm in a
Mhm.
religious life. Why is these people doing this to me? Da, da, da." And so by the time I got to Michigan, I was a wilted flower. That's what my the this and the place I went was run by nuns and priests. And so they said the sister who, took my intake and my story and everything said, "Wow, you're a wilted flower," because at this point, I did not smile. I was like, "What do I do?" And so and at the same time, Colin, by nature, I like I shared with you, I love to talk. So yeah, put me on a couch, find out what's wrong with me, you know? And literally I was on a couch. I mean, I saw a psychiatrist, a therapist, a group therapy. I was among other sisters in a similar situation. Similar, yeah. just
Mhm.
trying to find why or whatever. So by the time those 4 months were over, they came up with this saying, "You know what, sister? You fit this community. You're good." Yeah, and they came up with a not a diagnosis, but they just said that I was kinda suffering from my own personal low self-esteem. Like I shared with
Mm.
you, lot with physical problems, with just with yeah, once you build your confidence up with yourself, you're such an asset to this community. So I'm like, "Okay," so I went back into the community, and, now at this point, the sisters because a lot had happened prior to that, like
Mhm.
rejection, like I said, I was isolated and all this stuff that they all thought it was my fault, so there was, like, so much stuff, and I had to work on myself. "Okay, I'm working on myself, I'm working on myself." During that time of 4 months, I learned about, like, anger, I learned about people pleasing, this was all these
Yeah.
that I learned about myself. I'm like, "Okay, practice, practice, homework, do my homework." And then I was kinda stuck within myself. And then I found, I spoke to another person who went through a similar experience and said that they found some true healing at a silence retreat, someplace where you're silent with you and God.
Mhm.
You could find that spiritual healing. And I was like, "Okay, I'll do it. I'll go do it." Because it was not there was I wasn't at peace, the community was still like, I didn't feel belong, I didn't feel loved and
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
Um, so I did. I went out to another community of sisters and brothers that run this silence retreat. And I w and if when I had asked my superior, "Can I do this?" She's like, "Yes." You know what I mean? Like, I felt like they just wanted to get rid of me.
Yeah, that's kinda what it sounds like
It
in your
just like
story.
yeah, and at the same time, I felt they wanted to look good.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the community had a history of letting sisters go. So,
Oh, interesting.
and so I did. I went to the silence retreat for a month,
Wow.
and,
So were you
and
you were silent for an entire month?
yes, I
Wow.
was, they asked you to bring a notebook and a Bible, and that's it. And it was all about journaling.
So no speaking, no singing, no sound, just silence for a month?
I I would I had a sister from that community that would come to visit me every 24 hours, set up a
Mhm.
time, and I would read what I wrote in my journal the 20 hours prior. Like,
Oh,
they
okay.
would they would give me scripture, like, "Be still and know I am God," for an example.
Mhm.
And they'll say, "Ask God what he thinks about that scripture to you." So, it's writing, and you're like, "Wow, this is kinda weird." But
Yeah.
then as you're writing it, the first 2 sentence sounds like you, but then 24 hours, you're not supposed to read it back until the sister comes in, and when you read it out loud, you're like, "Oh my god, who's saying this?" Who's doing this?" And that was a technique in my life of part of healing when of healing of and, but I ended up staying there for 7 months in silence.
7 months? Wow. That sounds I mean, that's just a bizarre experience, like, I can't imagine like, I've done a couple days of silence and reflection and writing, and that feels like quite a bit, honestly.
Yeah.
7 months.
I don't know how I did it today. Back then, I it was once it was a grace from God. It was a super grace. It was a natural it was something not of
Yeah,
Gina.
how did that change you? What did that do to you?
Well, what it did to me is that I came to the core of my heart. I came inside my heart, like a real heart to heart relationship. It just I had such a graceful moment in the last 7 month of it. Wow, God loves me. This is who I
Mhm.
am. And there was that peace inside. I can't explain it, but there was something within me that changed, like a wall broke.
Wow, and
Uh,
has it stayed that way?
well, I went back to the community, like saying, "I got this." You
Okay.
know what I mean? Like, and I wanted everyone to have what I had because in those 7 months, I went back to, like, my childhood. Like, I mean, we do know that there are so many resources out there that help you get to your inner child. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, any
Mhm.
kind of experience, whether it's the energy, whatever it is. And through this writing and through 7 months, I got back to my inner child, like, really deep, and I found healing. Oh my god, that's what ha that's, and inviting, and at the same time, inviting God into that and knowing that, "Okay, I'm safe." So when I was, like, flying high, I was like, "Everybody has to go there for a month," you know what I mean? Like, everybody
Yeah.
needs to go deep, and, but the sisters didn't receive that. They weren't very receptive. It was like, so the peace that I had experienced, it was sorta like they were taking that, I
Mm.
weren't allowed to talk about it, I weren't allowed to talk to the I did. Only once I was allowed to tell the whole community my experience, but that was it. I couldn't talk to anyone else, and then
Yeah.
they restricted me for doing certain things and did this and this and that, and I was, "Okay, and but then I had a spiritual director who is outside the community, and I was telling him, I said, "I have this peace, but it seems like it's coming back again, they're blocking it, like, it's going away," and, and he says, "Well, they're crushing your personality," and then, I mean, and like I said, Colin, I would marry to God, I did everything I could, went through all this, yes, I'm gonna still fight it or still be committed, yeah, making my vows, but then I had a meeting with the superior, like, a few months after I came back from those 7 months, and then she said to me, she goes, "I don't think you belong here anymore." What?
Wow, I can't imagine, like, it just seemed like you were jumping through lots of hoops and having serious, um you were seriously processing through a lot, and you were really doing the work, and then coming back, and then being kicked out again, basically, like, "No, no, no, please." Like, "You should spend some more time out there." Like, I can't
And,
imagine how it would feel.
and and it was just so, I guess also by nature, I was a very trusting person, like, I would
Yeah.
be like, "Why are you hurting me? Why are you doing this? Especially you're in the church," I was just like, and then when she said that to me, I mean, of course, what do I say? It's like a people, "Okay, I don't belong here anymore." Like, I I
Yeah.
I felt like there were so many feelings, that a lot of feelings, but it's like I felt like I was pushed to the wall, and I had to give up. I couldn't
Yeah.
do it anymore.
Yeah, so what happened next? Where did you go from there?
Oh, from there, I came home, well, no, from there I went to come here to New Jersey to live with men with disabilities, adult men, because during my time as a sister, I connected with this family who had a house
Mhm.
that helps out men with and women with disabilities. So she invited me. She goes, "Would you like to come over?" Great transition time for me because I didn't know anything about the world. This is 2008, didn't know nothing about cell phones, et cetera, et cetera. So I come and live with these, and I'm broken. And I'm broken, and it's like, who am I? I'm not a sister. I was this famous sister, now I'm not. People know that I got left and da da da. Like, what do I do? And God and church and everything, and so I stayed there for 2 years. I stayed as a mother, like a house mother, and it was a great time for me, a gift because it was a smooth, like a transition healing. It was, I mean, because they all love you.
Yeah.
Down syndrome, they love you
Yeah,
unconditionally.
you were wanted there.
Exactly. That's a
Yeah.
good word. I was wanted there, I was accepted there, and I learned a lot, and I was healed. I felt healing from them, and then I learned a lot. Then during that time, I realized that, I'd fulfilled one vocation as a nun, that's it, because, a lot of people, not a lot of people, but sisters and brothers who leave vocations of one community, they hop into another community, or
Yeah.
they go somewhere else and to fulfill their vocation to God. And I was like, I didn't want to go to another community because I didn't want to be hurt. I was so hurt
Mhm.
by this community. Um, so then after 2 years being with the men with the disabilities, what did I do? I always loved the beach because I grew up on Long Island. So
Mhm.
I came to the Jersey Shore. Uh, but at the same time, I'm now in my 40s. I don't really know how to rent. I don't know nothing. And all I know is that I knew how to drink because drinking came back into the picture. And and I knew, and I went back. So after leaving the men and women with the disabilities and coming to the Jersey Shore, I was tired of service. I was
Mhm.
tired of helping others.
Yeah.
And, so I s the beach for me is where heaven and earth meets, a lot of peace. I continued being at the beach. I needed a job, so what did I do? I went back to bartending because that's the only thing I knew.
Yeah, what a
Bartending.
story. Yeah, going from bartending to a convent to helping people with disabilities back to bartending, like, what a circle. It's
Yes.
fascinating.
And I thought it was gonna stop there. So I had to, learn how to live life. I had to learn to become back in the world. So I bartended. People did not know I was a nun or anything like that. And then a gentleman came into the bar. His name was Danny. And so automatically, not automatically, it's like, wow, this guy is handsome, etc. And he took a liking to me. Oh my God. And then we started dating. Okay, this because Colin, ever since I was 18, I always wanted to get married and have 8 kids by 25. Okay, I'm in my 40s. Forget about the kids now at this time, you know? And so it's like, oh, maybe this guy Danny, this is it. We fell in love. We talked. We
Right off into the sunset, yeah.
Yeah, so
Mm,
this is it. This is gonna be my white picket fence, like
mhm,
my dream in late life, to have someone because at this point, like I never had a full-time job. I never had a I never had anything. It was just going from one thing to another. And so here Danny comes into my life, but then I come to find out a month into our relationship that he's an alcoholic. So when I met him, he was active in his disease, and now I don't know anything about alcoholics except for the brown paper bag under the bridge. Those with the brown.
mhm,
I mean, that's just my my image of what an alcoholic is, because I really didn't grow up. I like drinking. I mean, I had stories of my own, but at that time, never thought of anything. So here, Danny encouraged me to go to Al-Anon, which is a 12-step program for those who have this disease, because he knew he was an alcoholic, he just couldn't stop. But now since he met me, it's like, "Okay, now you could stop and we could live happily ever after." Um,
yeah,
but of course, that wasn't the case, and that wasn't his story nor our story together. Um because he did try. He found he sobriety, he went to rehabs, and meanwhile I went to Al-Anon and I was trying to fix him and control him and manipulate him and bribe him and then he did. He found sobriety finally out in Arizona back in 2012, and it's like this is it, he's like, Gina, I found a place. I found a good sobriety community. I found a job. Would you come out here? Yeah, definitely. Because there was something about him that I loved behind
mhm,
it all. Like, when he wasn't drinking, great guy, opened the door, everything, and you just knew that. And, so he did. So he came back, and I said, "Yes, I will come out to Arizona. You just get yourself settled, and I'll be there in a few months." And so he came back, grabbed his truck. His mom went in for went for a ride across country, starting this new life again, a new chapter in my life, in our life. And but tragically, they got into a car accident in Indiana, and the mother died and burned up, and Danny burned up, and he survived it. But yet, it was like that dreaded phone call I got that one morning, and meanwhile, I'm, like, all excited and happy. I'm gonna go to Arizona and everything, and, so I was just, "Okay, keep breathing," and then we thought Danny was gonna die, but he didn't. He survived, but he was burnt half of his body. So what do I do? Is of course I go to Indiana to be with him because that's where it all
mhm,
happened. As he was driving, he avoided a deer, and that's how the accident occurred. So okay, but he survived and he's sober, and he was about 60 days sober, but still he was sober. So we connected with the AA community out there. They befriended us, they helped us because we knew nobody, Nobody, Colin. I was like, "Okay,
Mhm.
this is another pain in my life, but, we're gonna make it through. God, you're gonna do this," because I was still I still believed in God. "Okay, God, you're gonna do this. This is great. You brought Danny in." Well, when we were out there, we got an apartment. I got a job, and maybe 2 months after the accident, what did Danny do as an alcoholic? He picked up again because of the pain. Because he
Yeah,
ended up seeing his mother burn up in this accident,
I can't
and
imagine.
yes, and I was so angry with God. I was like, "Why couldn't you knock him out?" Why did you because as I learn and know as an alcoholic, what do we do with our pain? We drink it, it's like trauma. It's like,
Yeah.
we take away our feelings. So he did. He went back, he started drinking again. We're in Indiana. I'm flipped out at this time, like, I couldn't understand why. You
Mm,
survived, we got this. We had a wedding date, we got engaged, he picks up. We have a wedding date in April. So I'm like, and I was like, I flipped out on I just flipped out. I was like,
mhm, mhm,
and I wasn't drinking, but I was just like, I had all the control issues and the isms and all that. And and then I kicked him out because I'm thinking this will be it. Da da da. But then 6 months or 5 months after that, in March of 2013, I found him dead. He died of the disease. He
You
ended up,
found him?
yeah, I found him. Yep. Because I kicked him out. He found an apartment. A few months later, I didn't hear from him. Somebody came up to me, said I didn't hear from him, so I went to his apartment, and ultimately he had been dead for a few days, and that was it for me, Colin. That was the last straw in my life, which I couldn't understand, and so it was after that where my pain, I was just simply existing. I was like, at this point, I, I just, I don't really remember. I was in such a zombie state, and but a few months after Danny had died, I went to go visit my sister, and I'm at the lake because she was on the lake to try some peas, crying like, and then they said to journal, so I started journaling. I started writing out my feelings. And in those feelings, I started writing the pain I experienced as a nun, my life, like,
Mm,
woe me, woe me, woe me. And I wrote about 180 pages and put that aside. And then I came back to Jersey. I was just, uh, at this point, Colin, I didn't want to live anymore. I truly,
yeah,
and not that I wanted to die, but I never would kill myself. But I wouldn't, I was begging begging God that I wouldn't wake up in the morning the night
mhm,
before.
mhm,
It brings tears to my eyes because here I am alive.
yeah,
But at that moment, I was like, I I I'm tired. I'm tired of doing, I'm tired. So so then when I came back to the shore, relearning, now Danny's not around, his mom's not around. Nobody's around. I just, I found a job because I found an apartment. I was sort of like, moving myself, walking forward. I hated God, hated with a passion.
mhm,
And then I walked into a meeting, an AA meeting, an open speaker meeting for some reason. And I don't know, God brought me in, and there I'm listening. And then, I met a guy there. He came up to me afterwards because he saw me crying, sitting in the back, and I told him Danny's story, da da da. And it turns out that he knew Danny. He's like, "Oh, I know Danny."
oh,
And
wow,
he's like, "What tragic." And then he and then once again, I was on another searching, like, why did Danny die? I didn't know what to do. So this gentleman invited me to come to an AA meeting, and I'm like, "I'm not an alcoholic." And so he says, "You could just come and listen. Just come and listen." So I did. I went, I identified myself the desire not to pick up. I was, it was a closed meeting, and I hear all these sober alcoholics or those struggling, and I was just so angry with them. I'm like, "Why are you living? And Danny's dead." And, And once again, I can't explain. There's no rhyme or reason for anything because I believe life's a mystery and my life's a mystery. That about 11 months being in these meetings every day, um, I realized that I'm an alcoholic. They
Oh,
go they went from one
didn't see that coming.
yeah, I didn't see that coming either because you're an alcoholic, not me, in these meetings. And Danny was the alcoholic. But then yet I just somebody had approached me during that time, a friend of mine, or I became friends with, and said, Gina, what is you come here every day, you say you're not an alcoholic, but why? There's some reason, and what is your relationship with alcohol? Aha. I was my relationship was with alcohol throughout my life was so hidden. It was hidden from everyone. It was hidden from myself.
Mhm.
And that's what I've learned, and that's what I've seen, and that's what I've experienced. And so on April 2nd, 2015, so God willing, in April, I'll have 10 years of sobriety. I said, "Hello, my name is Gina. I am an alcoholic." I'm like, "Oh my God, where did that come from?" And then I'm like, "Oh my God, another chapter of my life. Is this ever going to end in my life?" And, but when I had said that, it was the worst day, as well as the best day of my life. Because when I said that, for some reason, once again, mystery, everything I carried, all the pain, all the rejection, all the you name it, physical, emotional, all the fear, all the anger just opened up. And I was like, why is and it was more painful. And what did I want to do is like, oh, what do I do when I had this pain? I would go run and get a drink. I would run away from it. But
Mhm.
this time I acknowledged I was an alcoholic. Not that I really accepted it, but I said, I gotta really face this pain. I have to face it without picking up a drink, but face it and embrace it instead of running away and being denial of it.
Mhm.
And that's what I've learned. So I'm in the rooms of AA. I'm one day at a time. I found my recovery. I found my peaceful, happy, joyous, and free within. I look in hindsight and I'm like, oh my God, the alcohol was in the convent. The disease of alcoholism was all over. And here now, when I come to realize it, it's been the best gift for me because I'm able to realize this is who I am, but yet I have a healthy solution instead of picking up a drink, instead of whining about it, self-pity, those are all my best friends, or running away
Mhm.
from it, that I'm here to stand firm in my life as a sober woman. And then in that, I had a new relationship with God, with my higher power. Because to be honest with you, Colin, when I went into the rooms of AA, when I started sharing and talking, when I came to find out I was a nun and everything, and they're like, "Oh," and I'm thinking to myself, "But I hated God. I don't care. I hated God with a passion." And I have no problem saying that back then and even today, because I just, because sometimes we're like, "No, you can't hate God. God is God." No, yes, I hated God. I was divorced
Yeah.
to him. I had every right. I was
Yeah.
married to him. I know him. And but today, of course, that hatred turned to love, turned to a new life, a new way of living. And it's just very exciting today that I'm able to participate, to be present to life, to present to situations because life goes on, challenges happen, death
Mhm.
occurs, illnesses, whatever may be. But now I have a tools in the program and God with me to react in a healthier way, like in a being in the light, saying, "You know what, Colin? I wanna live today.
Yeah.
I wanna live until God calls me home."
Gina, would you mind if I ask you more about, like, how do you engage with death in a healthy way? Like, I don't know. I guess I'll just expand on that a little bit. Like, I don't know about you. It's probably very different for you based on what the vocation you've chosen, but um, for myself and most of the people I know, death is something that we live to avoid. It's not something that we want to confront. It's, um, cover it with a blanket, put it in the closet, keep it as far away as possible. That's not something I want to think about or talk about or consider. And you've experienced a lot of it in your life. And not only have you experienced it, but at this point, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you told me you're a death doula. You help people during that transitionary time. You've embraced it. You've walked towards it, not away. So I'd love to just hear more about what caused you to choose that, and also how do you engage with that in a healthy way?
Well, I have to say, like I shared with you, it was from my mom's death that I experienced death. That I just was like, "No way." And ironically, the hospice people back then, the social worker said, "You'd be very good with dying patients." I'm like, "No way, Jose." And so as I came back into the church, into my faith, I experienced that resurrection of Jesus, the heaven. Heaven opened up. And
Mhm,
then in that, I don't know how or why, but I did have a desire and a passion to bring people to help people to go home. They don't have to be Catholic or Christian to go to a better place because I've been in hell here. This is,
mhm,
for me, Colin, hell is no faith, no hope, no love, no God. And when I was in that state a few times in my journey, in my life, you can't go anywhere. But when you taste life, when you realize the recovery, when you taste God or peace and that hope, you're like, there is a better place than here. And so, fast forward, as I was being in recovery 2 years ago, somebody says, because people knew the desire of my heart, and also God put me in places where people were dying, and I didn't even know them. Yeah, I
mhm,
would just because I love to pray. Okay, I know you're going home. I know you're going to God, but wherever you're going, to a peaceful place. I don't push my faith on them. I don't push my belief or anything. I pray that they find their own journey. And or if they ask me about my journey, I share about my journey. This is what I taste. I tasted heaven, heaven on earth here. So I know there's a much better place than this life. I know it from the bottom of my heart, and that's something I grow in. So in that, when I came to find out I could be certified as an end of life doula, because I never knew what an end of life doula was until
mhm,
2, 3 years ago. What is that? Oh, be with the oh my God, that's my passion. I could get an A+ in this. I don't need to go to school. I
mhm,
and I never went to school for any of this. Like I could be a grief counselor, I could do all this, but and I never went to school because I could do it from my own personal experience.
yeah,
And so and it's so true what you say, because people run away from death. They're afraid of death, fear of death, and that's okay because that's where they're at the time.
mhm,
And I know in God's grace and God's time for each one of us that he will enlighten the soul, the person, something to for that person to resign saying, "Oh, okay, it's time for me to go. It's time for me to go home." It's time for me wherever they nirvana, wherever they think, because I know God is behind it all, and I believe in that. So when I'm with someone who calls me, and not many people do, because I work, I'm not in the hospice care, so a lot of people have hospice. I'm
mhm,
sort of more like a companion. I'm sort of like I don't do any medical issues
yeah,
or anything like
yeah,
that. I'm like, if you want me, yes, I'll hold your hand. I'll talk to you. I
mhm,
don't I don't need to talk to you. Whatever you want. You want me to pray? I could pray vocal, I could pray silent. I don't need to pray. I I just know that I'm there because first of all, God's designed for me to be there with that person to share, and I just pray and I rely on his spirit to say, "Okay, what do you what do we need in this situation?" I never tell anyone, "You need to believe in this, do this, do this, do this." No, because I know God is all merciful, and I know He's with that person, and for some mysterious reason, I'm there with them, whether it's a
mhm,
day, whether it's 2 days, whether it's just a few hours,
yeah.
just to share. And I just know that I may not see it in this life, but I know when I die, I'll see it in the next, and I really believe in that. I really
So
believe in that. I don't know if that has helped you.
yeah, I'm really curious what advice you'd give to, well, just I guess for me. Let's just
Yeah.
make it personal. I don't I'm grateful to say that no one has died super recently in my family, but of course it's happened and it will happen again. Um, and I would really like to be stronger in those situations. I would like to be able to bring comfort to dying people, and I'd also like to comfort those who are, left behind, still here. What advice would you give me to be better in those situations and help others more?
Well, I do have to say, you did the first step. You have the desire. You have the nobody ever said that to me. I have the desire what to be stronger, to have faith, and so that's the key thing is the willingness. Is the willingness for you to be open. And then what I would, suggest, it will grow. It will grow. You don't need to ask for it. You don't need to ask for a situation to come to test it out. But with you
No,
and
I'm
your
not doing that.
no, 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 but I'm just saying, with you and your guy and with your higher power, living one day at a time and building your relationship with whoever that's not you, because that's what I believe there's someone greater than us, whether it's God, Jesus, Buddha, whatever, that's not me or it's not Colin, that it will happen, it will manifest without you realizing it or not. As because I believe you are married and you have a child, right? Just
Correct.
recently or like a little time?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm saying as you focus on your family one day at a time and giving them that love and whatever you need as a father, a husband,
Mhm.
and a provide whatever it may be, God comes through. He blesses. So when and like I really encourage you, since you have that desire, he'll show you what to do. I have no doubt that he will show you personally when life happens, things happen, whatever big or small, whatever it may be, that you'll see like, aha, this is what I've been growing in. This is what I've been be prepared for. And
Mhm.
and and who knows? You know what I mean? Like only God knows. It will flourish, whether it's just for your family, whether it's for others, whether it's a new whatever it may be, you'll know. You'll know. And that's what I mean for myself, but then also I know, like, see, I feel comfortable that I could talk to you about my passion. Not many people want to hear it. And hopefully I know listeners out there may not want to hear it, but I want to say you're not alone, and that's okay. That's okay because I believe that God reveals to each one of us, our hearts and souls, what we need to know or need to hear if we're willing or open, no matter what. No
Mhm.
matter what. If it's I mean, what you shared with me, I was like, "Wow, God, you're planting seeds in his heart."
Yeah, and I wanted to talk to you and have you on the show too, not because I thought, wow, our audience just really wants to hear about death.
Yeah.
That never crossed my mind. And, I figured there's a lot of people who might want to even skip this conversation. It won't be for them, but it was for me. Like when I talked to you, I felt like this is a story I want to hear. And, I could tell that I have a lot to learn from you and your story, and so I wanted to hear it. So and I'm sure I'm not the only one. I think there will be a lot of other people who will really connect with this and find more peace in their life just from hearing you speak. So I appreciate you taking the time to do so.
Oh, I appreciate Colin, and thank you, because it is a passion of my heart. Like I shared, I wrote the memoir. It was published last summer, Shake the Dust Off Your Feet and Walk. It's available on Amazon. I also have a website, ginaecon.com. So if anybody wants to get in touch with me, whether in regards to the story or just about end of life doula or anything, feel free. Yeah, my website, you could contact me because it's a passion of my heart. It's like the service is God, and I love sharing and talking. It's like, whether I'm talking to you, Colin, or whoever, as long as one person is touched, I'm touched. I get emotional. I'm like, wow, I've been through that, and here I am today. So, I also like to share that you're not alone. We're all not alone. There's miracles in the air. There's life. Life goes on, but God's got this. So,
Mhm.
I mean, in my life and in my face.
Yeah. Well, Gina, you're a beautiful person, and I really appreciate you speaking to me today and spending an hour of life together. I it was well worth my time. I wouldn't have spent it any other way. So thank you.
Me too. Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you. And
All
thank
right.
you to all your listeners and everyone.
Yeah. Thank you.
The Superhuman Academy podcast is hosted by Collin Jewett and designed and edited by Army Cinco, with original music by Joshua Shunig and voiceovers by Corey Page Shunig. That's me. You can find past episodes and resources, as well as access to the ever-growing Superhuman Academy community at superhumanacademy.com. If you like the show, don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review on your podcast platform of choice.